To create a scalloped edge cast on, first you need to do a long tail cast on, and I'm casting on a multiple of 4 stitches. And this 4 stitches will be 3 stitches to make the curve of the scallop, and then 1 stitch will make the dip in the scallop. So if you want a wider scallop, you can cast on more stitches, but for me, I'm working a multiple of 4 stitches. So once you've done your cast on, then you're going to work some setup rows, and these rows will develop the height of the scallop. So I'm going to work 3 rows because I'm working flat and I need to end on a wrong side row. But if you're working in the round, you can work however many rows you want. So I've turned my work and it's 3 rows in stocking stitch. So my first row will be a purl row, and then I'll knit 1 row and then purl 1 row. Obviously, if you're working in the round, you can just knit every round. And it doesn't matter how many rows you do, as long as if you're working flat, you end on a wrong side row. So now I've finished my 3 setup rows. This is the row that we create the scallop. So to do this, you're going to work the following sequence. You're going to knit 3, drop 1 stitch and twist knit. So I'm going to knit 3, and then the next stitch I'm going to drop and just drop it off the needle, and you're going to drop it all the way down to the very bottom like this. And then you're going to insert your right needle behind all the strands but the top one. So bring it out with just the top one underneath it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to twist this strand round to the right side of the work. So with my right needle, I'm just going to pull it down, bringing the right needle back to the right side of the work, like so. And then slip it to the left needle and then knit the stitch. And you can see a little scallop is created. And I'll show you that again. So I'm going to knit 1, 2, 3, and then drop the next stitch. And then take the right needle underneath all the strands apart from the top one, like that. And then you're going to return the right needle to the right side of the work with this strand. So pull it down and twist it round, and then slip it to the left needle and knit the stitch. And you can see this really cute little scallop created. And you just continue that across the rest of the row or round, and then you can just start knitting as normal, whatever pattern you're making on top. To create a scallop on an edge that isn't the cast on, you can pick up stitches and work in a similar way to the previous method. So this scallop, again, I'm working on 3mm needles, and I'm working with a multiple of 5 stitches. And that's 4 stitches for the curve and 1 stitch for this twist that makes it dip to create this shape. So you can adjust this amount of stitches to kind of create a longer scallop. So if you wanted a multiple of 7 stitches, your scallop would be more like this, like a wider width of a scallop. So that's up to your project and also your yarn and gauge, kind of how wide you want the scallops. But I'm working with a multiple of 5 stitches. So this is the edge that I want my scallop to be on. And all I've done is picked up a multiple of 5 stitches along the edge. So if you were doing a different multiple, you would pick up a multiple of those stitches along your edge. And then I'm working in the round, so I've worked 3 rounds in knit, but this just needs to be stocking stitch. So if you're adjusting this to work flat, then you would do a purl row, a knit row and a purl row. And then you want to end with the right side of the work facing upwards. So to adjust the height of your scallop, you can also work a different number of rows. If you say worked 5 rows here, you'd end up with more height in your scallop and probably a bit more definition. But for my design, I just want to do 3 rows or rounds. So once you've worked your rows of stocking stitch, the cast off row is where the scallop is created. So the sequence is cast off 4. So I'm going to cast off 4 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now you're going to twist, slip 1 stitch and cast it off. So what you need to do is take your right needle and bring it underneath the rows and pick up of the next stitch. So you can see this is your next stitch, the first stitch on the left needle, and if you follow it all the way down, you can see these are the rows that we worked and this is where we picked up the stitches. So I'm going to take my right needle and bring it underneath all of those things, so underneath the pickup and underneath the rows, and I'm going to bring it through the back of the stitch like this. So it should look something like this. And now I'm going to slip it onto that right needle like that. And then with this maneuver, you're going to bring this stitch through this hole. So you can kind of see where your needle is coming from and it needs to go back. So you can see the needle is coming from this gap here and I need to bring it back. So to do that, I'm just going to pull the needle down and twist it, pulling that stitch through. And it still remains on my right needle, but it's just been untwisted even, so you can start working again. So I'm going to then cast this stitch off. So I'm just going to cast it off like that. And then that's the sequence. So I'll show you that again. So I've worked that stitch quite tightly there. Well, you're kind of forced to work it quite tightly. And then when it comes to the cast off, I'm actually casting these stitches off quite loosely. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm casting them off quite loosely just to get kind of more definition in the scallop, otherwise it ends up quite tight. So when you cast off the 4, you're ready to work the twist, slip and cast off again. So you can see the first stitch on my left needle, and I'm going to follow the stitch all the way down and see where the pickup is, which is here. And sometimes it's a bit messy, to be honest, it's not that clean cut, but as long as you take your needle under everything, it will be fine. So I'm just going to take my right needle underneath and take it through the back of the stitch like that. So your work should look like this. And then you just need to return the right needle back where it came from. So I can see it came through this gap here. So I need to get my right needle back through here. So I'm just going to move that stitch to my right needle and then twist it and pull it through this gap, keeping the stitch on the needle. And that's the main thing. And then I'm going to cast the stitch off like so. And then I'm just going to continue working in this way. show you one more time. The stitch on my left needle, follow it all the way down, take the right needle under everything, the pickup and all the rows, and pull it through the first stitch on my left needle. Slip it to the right needle and then check where the right needle is coming from, which is here, this gap, and I'm going to twist and pull my needle back through the gap, keeping the stitch on the needle, and then cast it off, like so. And then you can just keep working in that manner, and you can apply this method to really kind of any project you're using. You just kind of can adapt the different rows and the different multiple of stitches to get what you like.